Dark chosen ones, you have to struggle with your ego alone, and it's harsh. There's a truth most people never want to hear, let alone live through. Awakening is not beautiful at first, it's not peaceful. It's not a calm walk through a garden of enlightenment. No, for the dark chosen ones, the rare few whose soul signatures were coded with ancient fire, it's violent, it's raw, it's isolating, and above all, it's egocidal. You will not be guided gently into your higher self. You will be ripped open, stripped bare, and forced to confront every illusion you've ever clung to. And the most brutal part? You have to do it alone. No one is coming, no one is meant to walk this path with you, because the ego, the mask you thought was you, will fight to the death to survive. And only in solitude can you face it without interference. I say this not to scare you, but to prepare you. You need to understand what you're truly stepping into. When you hear the call to rise, when the synchronicities increase, when your dreams start to reveal hidden layers of your soul, know this: your ego is already panicking. It knows something is coming, and it will do everything in its power to protect its throne. The ego doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to be seen. It wants to keep you looping in patterns, in distractions, in validation seeking, in fear. And the moment you choose to step outside the matrix, to pierce through the veil, to actually see, that's when the war begins.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
At first, the ego pretends to be your friend. It whispers logical fears. It gives you reasons not to meditate today. It tells you you're already awake enough. It says you're doing fine. Don't go deeper. But the deeper you go, the louder it gets, until it starts to scream. It triggers your insecurities. It floods your mind with doubt. It pulls from your past, your trauma, your fears of abandonment, your hunger for approval, and it uses all of it to keep you small, to keep you safe. But what it really means is to keep you obedient, to keep you asleep. This is exactly why the dark chosen ones must walk alone, because no one can fight this battle for you. No one can dismantle your ego but you. People can give you tools, they can guide you to the edge, but the leap, that's yours. And when you leap, there will be no applause, no validation, no confirmation, just silence. Just the vast unknown. Just you and every part of you that you've ignored, buried, or faked your way around. That's the darkness. Not evil, not wrong, just unintegrated truth. And here's the twist. The ego isn't just loud and manipulative, it's seductive. It knows your weaknesses better than anyone. It knows how to wrap spiritual language around itself and pretend it's your higher self. It will wear the mask of humility, of logic, of just being realistic. It will quote your favorite gurus. It will pretend to be the voice of reason, but its core vibration always reveals itself. Fear, scarcity, division, urgency, control. That's how you know it's ego, and every time you feed it, it grows stronger. So what do? You sit with it. You don't fight it like an enemy. You don't try to destroy it. That gives it power. You sit, you observe, you let it throw its tantrum, you let it whisper, scream, cry, beg. You hold the line, you stay present. And in that stillness, something profound happens. The ego starts to unravel. Not because you forced it, but because your awareness is something it cannot survive. The ego exists in noise. It feeds on reactivity. But when you become still, when you become the silent witness, it panics because it realizes you're remembering who you really are, not the roles, not the identity, but the field, the essence, the presence, the formless power that was never afraid to die because it was never born. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat with your thoughts without trying to change them, fix them, or escape them? When was the last time you looked at your pain and said, "Show me everything"? Most people avoid this, and that's why they stay stuck. That's why they keep repeating the same cycles. Because they never go deep enough to find the root. They cut the weeds, but they never dig into the soil. But the dark chosen ones, we dig. We go into the underworld. We descend. We face the serpent, and we don't flinch. This is why initiation is brutal, because it's not about becoming more. It's about becoming less attached, less reactive, less identified. You shed layers. You let go of stories. You stop explaining yourself. You stop needing to be understood. You stop performing. And that's when the real power begins to emerge. Not power over others, not the power to manipulate, but the power to be unmoved, to walk through fire and not be burned, to stand in chaos and remain centered, to hear the ego scream and not obey. You will lose people. You will lose roles. You will feel like you're disappearing. And in a way you are. The false you is dying. The mask is dissolving. The illusion is being pierced. And yes, it's harsh. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it's terrifying at times. But it is sacred. It is holy. It is necessary. Because only through the death of the ego can the true self emerge. And the true self doesn't need approval. It doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't need to be liked. It just is. It moves in silence. It radiates without effort. It speaks without fear. It leads without wanting to lead. That's what's waiting for you on the other side of ego death. Not emptiness, not loss, but clarity, precision, freedom. But you have to go through it alone. The mirror of madness. How your shadow becomes the gateway to your real power. Once you've stepped beyond the first layer of ego's defenses, the world doesn't get easier, it gets more surreal. This is the phase where most people turn back, because what you're about to face isn't just your ego anymore, it's your shadow. The parts of you that were exiled, forgotten, shamed, and suppressed. And here's the paradox that breaks most minds. The more spiritually awakened you become, the more intense your shadow becomes. Why? Because your light shines brighter now. And that light begins to illuminate every corner of your inner world. Every crack, every distortion, every mask you didn't even know you were wearing. And what you see in that mirror, it will shake you, it will haunt you. But if you stay with it, it will free you. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your initiation. It's the keeper of your real power. It holds the raw, unfiltered, primal energy that you had to suppress to survive. Your rage, your lust, your jealousy, your hunger for control, your hatred, your pain, your need to dominate or submit, all of it locked away because society told you it was wrong, because your family couldn't hold it, because your culture punished it. It became But here's the truth: you cannot access your full power until you reclaim your shadow. You cannot embody divine authority while rejecting half of your being. You cannot walk as your whole self while hiding pieces of your truth in the dark. This is where the mirror of madness appears, and what makes it so brutal is that it doesn't show you monsters outside, it shows you the monster inside. It shows you the parts of yourself you've judged in others. It shows you how much you've lied to yourself. It shows you how you've used spirituality as a mask, as an escape, as a way to feel superior. It shows you how much of your identity was built not from truth, but from pain. And it's in this mirror that you realize something soul-shattering. You were never the victim. You were the creator of your own cage. And every time you blamed someone else, you delayed your own liberation. This is not about guilt or shame. This is about radical ownership. Because until you own your shadow, you don't own your power. As long as you deny your darkness, you are fragmented. You are leaking energy. You are walking as a half-self, hoping the world will complete you. But the world cannot complete what you refuse to claim. Your power is not in your perfection, it's in your wholeness. And wholeness includes the parts you've been running from your entire life. Let me ask you something. Can you sit with the version of yourself you despise the most and love them? Can you look into the eyes of your inner manipulator, your inner addict, your inner liar and say, "You belong"? This is not a theoretical question. This is the exact gate you must walk through to access the next level of consciousness. Because your shadow is not just a wound, it's a portal. It's the doorway into your deepest wisdom, your rawest truth, your unstoppable fire. But you have to go through the madness. You have to let it break you open. You have to let yourself feel what you've been avoiding for decades. And it will feel like madness. Your mind will try to protect you. It will say, "This is too much." It will try to numb you with distractions. It will try to rationalize the pain. But you must go deeper. You must let the grief rise. You must let the rage burn. You must let the shame scream, not to indulge it, but to integrate it. Because every emotion you've buried is a frequency out of alignment. And every time you face one and hold it in presence, you bring it back into harmony. You become more whole, more clear, more sovereign. At this point, something strange begins to happen. You start to notice that the things that used to trigger you no longer hold power. The people who used to manipulate you no longer get a response. The situations that once caused anxiety now feel neutral. Why? Because you've reclaimed the parts of you that were susceptible to those illusions. You've absorbed your shadow. You don't need to fight anymore because there's nothing left to fight. You've become a mirror so clean that others see themselves in you without distortion. And that's terrifying to some, but to the awakened, it's magnetic. This is the true power of the dark chosen ones, not to dominate, not to escape, but to integrate, to walk as the living paradox, to hold light and darkness in equal reverence, to embody divinity while honoring humanity, to be both warrior and healer, both fire and stillness, both chaos and order, and to do this not for validation, not for attention, but because your soul remembers. You didn't come here to be light, you came here to be whole. You came here to break the code, to collapse the illusion, to walk the path that terrifies others alone. Because once you've integrated your shadow, you don't just return with inner peace. You return with dominion over your reality. You become unshakable, clear, magnetic, You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you embody. And everything that is not aligned with your vibration simply falls away. The threshold of sovereignty, how being alone turns you into a living force. There is a breaking point in every real spiritual journey, a moment where you no longer feel part of the world you once knew, yet you haven't fully stepped into the power you can sense just beyond the veil. It's like being suspended between dimensions. You've faced the ego, you've stared down the shadow, and now there's silence. Not peace, not yet, but a silence that feels cosmic, ancient, and utterly disorienting. This is the threshold of sovereignty, and it's not a place, it's a state of being. What makes it so difficult is that everything external seems to vanish. People stop calling, opportunities dry up, old desires dissolve. Even your motivation to become something fades. You feel like nothing. You feel invisible. And that's exactly what is supposed to happen. Because before you can become sovereign, you must be emptied. You must be stripped of everything that kept your identity tethered to illusion. You must lose every crutch, every codependent bond, every false mission. You're not just losing people, you're shedding versions of yourself that were built for survival, not truth. And this is where most turn back, because the loneliness is unbearable. The silence is too loud. The absence of ego feels like death, and in many ways it is. But what's really dying isn't you, it's who you thought you had to be. Real sovereignty cannot be inherited. It cannot be taught. It is earned through solitude, through silence, through surrender. You have to be willing to touch the bottom of your aloneness without flinching. To sit in a room with no distractions, no affirmations, no rituals, just you, your breath, and the raw presence of your being. And you must ask yourself the question that splits the soul in half. Who am I if no one is watching? Not what do I do or what do I believe, but what remains when all stories are burned to ash? Most can't answer that, because most have never truly been alone. They've always had something to lean on, a relationship, a belief, a goal, a role, a community. But here, at this threshold, all of that is gone, and what's left is the real work. To become whole with no audience, to become powerful with no praise, to become a living force with no one to validate your path. This is where the dark, chosen ones are forged, not in the light of recognition, but in the dark of isolation. But something miraculous begins to take shape in that darkness. Slowly, quietly, you begin to feel a shift. Your nervous system recalibrates, your body starts to feel like home, your mind softens, your intuition sharpens. You no longer need to chase clarity, it arises on its own. You no longer seek signs, they become constant. You start to realize that silence was never empty. It was full of everything you needed to remember. Now you know, not because someone told you, not because you read it in a book, but because you became it. You become the stillness, the mountain, the storm, and the calm. You realize that sovereignty isn't about control, it's about presence. You don't need to force anything anymore. You don't need to prove who you are. You don't need to defend your path. You've become the path. And in doing so, you become a frequency so rare, so exact, that reality begins to bend around you, not because you command it, but because you're in perfect resonance with it. And people will feel it, the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you don't speak. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer performing. You're no longer leaking energy trying to be understood. You're rooted, you're clear, you're sovereign. And that energy, it's magnetic, not flashy, not loud, but undeniable. Because people can sense when someone has faced themselves without flinching. They can feel when someone has walked through fire and come back whole. This is the real power. It's not about being above others. It's about being beyond illusion. It's about becoming so internally stable that nothing external can shake you, so deeply aligned that the universe responds to your stillness as if it were a command. This is the reward of walking alone. This is what waits on the other side of the void. The final code: you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to reshape reality. There's a realization that strikes only after you've crossed the desert of ego, survived the mirror of shadow, and anchored into your sovereignty, and it's this: you were never meant to fit in. Not in the way the world told you to. Not in the way you were conditioned to crave. All your life you felt different, misunderstood, too intense, too quiet, too much or not enough. You tried to blend in, to soften the edges, to dim your light so others wouldn't squint. You wore masks, you played roles, you said what was expected, but deep down you knew there was something else inside you. Something ancient, something powerful, something that didn't come here to adapt to this world, but to reshape it. This is the final code, the truth hidden beneath all the pain, the reason why your journey has been so brutal, so lonely, so relentless. You weren't being punished, you were being forged, like a blade in fire, like a diamond under pressure. Because what you carry is not ordinary. It's not meant for comfort, it's meant for impact. And to carry that kind of energy, you had to be stripped of everything false. You had to walk alone. You had to face the silence, because only then could you remember your original design. You see, the world doesn't need more people who fit in. It doesn't need more polished personalities or carefully curated identities. It needs disruptors of the illusion. It needs beings who walk with clarity in a time of confusion, who speak truth in a sea of noise, who hold frequency so precise it makes the unconscious uncomfortable. That's why your presence has always been disruptive. That's why people projected onto you, feared you, misjudged you, not because you were broken, but because your energy activated their distortion. You didn't come to comfort the matrix, you came to crack it, and once you truly accept that, everything changes. You stop apologizing for your intensity, you stop hiding your depth, you stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You no longer seek permission to exist, you simply exist, fully, unapologetically, and with purpose. Not the kind of purpose that's attached to titles or outcomes, but the kind of purpose that radiates from your being like a frequency. You don't do the mission, you are the mission. This is when you stop chasing timelines. You stop trying to manifest from lack. You stop trying to force alignment. Because you are alignment. You walk into rooms and shift the dynamic just by breathing. You speak and people feel the truth behind your words before their minds can even process it. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you've become the mirror. The sacred, unflinching mirror that reflects what others are not ready to see, but deeply need to. Let me ask you something now, and I want you to answer with your whole being. Are you willing to live a life that makes no sense to the world, but perfect sense to your soul? That's the final test. Because walking this path means you'll often feel like an outlier, like you're walking against the current, like no one understands what you're doing or why. But you'll do it anyway, not for validation, not for praise, but because your inner compass leaves you no choice. When you've tasted truth, illusion becomes unbearable. When you've felt real freedom, compromise feels like death. You can't go back. You won't go back, because you've seen too much, you've remembered too much, and now you walk differently. You move with intention, you speak with precision, you act with alignment, you radiate with a quiet knowing, and the world begins to rearrange itself around your presence. Not because you're seeking power, but because you become power. Not the corruptible kind, not the hierarchical kind, but the kind that bends reality through frequency. The kind that reshapes timelines through embodiment. The kind that cannot be faked, bought, or stolen. You are no longer a seeker, you are a living axis, a walking portal, a new law in motion. You never needed to fit in. You came here to change everything.